the summer months are known for vacations, warm weather, going to the beach and everything. Well, some people like me know it as prediction season and talking season, and that is far more important to me than any sort of beach vacation or fun I might have with family and friends. So today we're going through the roster of every SEC team. I'll give you a record prediction. We'll just kind of go through their impact playmakers, some of the biggest notes that I took out, the biggest takeaways, from looking at their rosters and making some predictions and seeing how the SEC is going to shape up this year. So just going alphabetically, starting off with Alabama. I mean, obviously, Ryan Williams, a receiver. He's the superstar, but really the biggest story is how is Ty Simpson going to step in to that role at quarterback for Jalen Milroe. He's a former 5-star guy. He was the number 25 overall recruit in his class, and he played in 6 games last year, just kind of in garbage time, not doing a whole lot. But if he wasn't good enough to be the starting quarterback for Alabama, to get them to the playoff, to get them to Atlanta, then he wouldn't still be there. The coaches would have told him, look, you're not going to start. We're going to go to the portal and get somebody else. But they didn't do that. They kept Ty, and they're going to have him start because he's good enough to do it. So there's obviously questions about his lack of experience, which is totally understandable. But overall, there's really no reason not to have a lot of confidence in Ty Simpson. And then at running back, you have Jam Miller, who's coming back after really being the primary guy for them last year. And also Richard Young, who I believe is going to be, he could be a big difference maker, sort of an X-factor guy for them. He's a redshirt sophomore, rotational guy last season who played in 7 games, had 27 carries for just 146 yards and 2 scores. But the guy's got the physical attributes to be great, and I think we'll see him a lot more this year for Bama on offense. And looking at newcomers, with the portal this year, obviously you have, not just this year, but the past few years, you have so much turnover and a lot of new faces. They only have 2 newcomers on offense from the transfer portal. One of them is Isaiah Horton, a receiver. He came in from Miami, and he's a 6'4", big body, kind of jump ball guy that Bama kind of needed to add to, because Ryan Williams is more of just an explosive threat, not really a contested catch guy. Jeremy Bernard's a senior. He can kind of do it too, but Isaiah Horton is a true jump ball guy, which they needed. And then also at a left guard, they have Cam Dewberry coming in from Texas A&M. He played in all 12 games his journey with A&M. Experienced guy on the offensive line, but having minimal O-line turnover, I think, is really good for Bama, obviously, but also just to keep Ty Simpson hopefully on his feet and comfortable, because if he gets uncomfortable, then his inexperience might start to show. But you have Caden Proctor coming back at left tackle. Obviously, he was an all-SEC second team last season. You have Wilkin Formby at the other right tackle position. At right tackle. He played in 9 games, only started twice at right tackle, so he will have a little more of a breaking in process, but he, just like Caden Proctor, he's 6'7". So this O-line is absolutely massive for Bama. The question really is just, will the transfer additions and the newcomers, sort of the starting roles, really be able to step into those and be effective? Defensively, there are just 0 new faces. Everybody who was projected to start on defense for Alabama was there last year. You look at guys like Justin Jefferson, the middle linebacker, who played in 12 games last year, one of their more productive players. Deontay Lawson, I'm really excited to see him come back. He was a team captain last year before he tore his ACL in the Oklahoma game for Bama last season. He was a Butkus Award semifinalist. He was 3rd team All-SEC from coaches. Before he got injured, he had 76 tackles, which was top 10 in the conference. 6.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a pick, 4 pass breakups. The guy just produces everywhere. So I'm really excited to see him come back. I'm excited to see Tim Keenan III as well. He started in 12 games last year, appeared in all 13 on the defensive line, was very productive. Quay Russo and LT Overton coming off the edge, I think it's a very dynamic duo that's going to be terrorizing quarterbacks. And then looking at Bama's secondary, you got like Domani Jackson, who transferred from USC, before last season, started all 13 games last year. Zabian Brown started all 13 games last year as a freshman. He was freshman All-SEC, had 3 picks, 2 fumble recoveries, 18 total tackles. That guy's really exciting to watch, and I think he'll make a big jump from freshman to sophomore year and be even better. And then you obviously have Keon Sabb, who is at free safety, Michigan transfer before last season. There's just so much talent on this Alabama team. Like, the demise of the Bama's program has been really overstated. Just because Saban is gone does not mean that DeBoer can't keep doing it at a high level. Like, talent acquisition, winning because he can. He's just the first guy to ever come right after the greatest. So the expectations are way high for him. But there's really no reason to be worried about Alabama. And I think, especially recruiting-wise and talent acquisition-wise. But on the field this year, I do have them performing not necessarily below expectations, but to where people will still be like, this never happened when Saban was here, even though it did. I had them starting off with a win at Florida State, beating ULM, and Wisconsin starting off 3-0. Then they'll have their bye week. I think they'll go on the road and lose to Georgia, but then win their next 3 versus Vanderbilt, at Missouri, and versus Tennessee. And then I had them going to Columbia and losing to South Carolina, who I think is going to be a very good team this year. They have their bye week. Then they'll win their next 3, which is LSU, Oklahoma, and East Illinois, all at home. And then I have them dropping the Iron Bowl on the road in Jordan-Hare to go 9-3 and 5-3 in the SEC. Now, obviously, 3 conference losses and not getting to Atlanta is going to raise more doubts about DeBoer because people just love doing that. But I don't think it's a failure of a season for Alabama at all. It's a first-year quarterback, starting quarterback. You have the turnover of the portal. You're still dealing with the depth issues that the portal brings. Bama going 9-3 won't be awesome, but they'll still be in reach for a playoff spot. And if you get Simpson back next year, you can kind of play 2026 as the year that we'll make another run. Moving on now to Arkansas. Really the only thing worth mentioning here is Taylor Green. I'll mention more stuff, but he's really the only thing worth mentioning. The redshirt senior who threw for over 3,000 yards last season, ran for 600, had 23 total touchdowns. He had 9 picks last year, so he needs to be a little smarter with the ball this season to keep being effective. He had 4 games with both a touchdown on the ground and through the air, and the guy is 6'6", 224. Like, he could be playing power forward in the NBA. He's impossible to take down, got a great arm. If this guy was on one of the better teams in the SEC, he'd be getting like serious Heisman buzz. And I have no problem with him being a Heisman dark horse if he can somehow lead Arkansas to being like 8-4. But I don't think that'll happen. I think he's just kind of stuck on a team that's not able to help him. So he'll still be a great player, but he won't necessarily get the stars he deserves just because of his situation, really. Then looking at Arkansas's receivers, it's a very new room. You have Monty Harrison, who's a sophomore. He played in 11 games last year as a freshman, but only caught 2 passes. So he wasn't really featured as a receiver that often. He was out on the field, but he didn't get a whole lot of reps. So I want to see how he operates this year. They have Omega Blake, who is a transfer in from Charlotte. He played in all 12 games last year for the 49ers, 32 grabs for almost 800 yards and 9 touchdowns. And they also have Ishmael Sissy, who's a transfer from Stanford. He's a redshirt sophomore who played in all 12 last year for the Cardinal, had 26 grabs, 240 yards, and 2 scores. So it's a very new receiver room to Arkansas. You have those 2 transfers, obviously, who have experience, but this is their first time in the SEC. And then you have Monty Harrison, who was in the program last year, but didn't really get a lot of run. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The defense has a pair of former 5-stars who could, if they're able to kind of rally together and finally play up to their potential, they could be very good. The first is Xavier Sorey Jr. I shouldn't say play up to their potential because Sorey has been an elite linebacker. He transferred in from Georgia before last season, started all 13 in 2024. He had 99 tackles, 9.5 TFLs, 2 sacks, and a pick to go along with 3 quarterback hurries. He's one of the best linebackers in the conference and in the country. And then you also look at Jaheim Singletary, also a transfer from Georgia from 2 years ago. He is a former 5-star DB who played in 10 and started 6 last year, had 25 tackles, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. The defense will really go as those 2 guys go. If they can, because they have the most raw talent on that side of the ball for Arkansas, but if they can't really get things going, I don't know who else to look to step up and kind of take over that role. Those 2 need to be the leaders. But if not, elsewhere you have guys like Cameron Ball, who is a redshirt senior at defensive tackle, who had 47 tackles in the second half last year. You also get Steven Dix, who is Sorey's running mate at linebacker, who is a redshirt senior, started all 13 games last year with 47 tackles for him. Obviously, the talent level at Arkansas isn't awesome, but you have those 2 former 5-stars who can try and maybe galvanize that defense. And then just one more note, the offensive line is very, very experienced. At left tackle, you have Corey Robinson, who is a redshirt senior transferring in from Georgia Tech. At left guard, you have Carmona Fernando, who is a redshirt senior who was 13th all SEC last year. Center, you've got Caden Kidler, who is a redshirt junior transferring in from UCF. At right guard, you have a redshirt senior, Keyshawn Blackston, who was played in all 12 last year for Arkansas. And then at right tackle, you have Marion Harris, who is a redshirt junior and started all 13 for Arkansas last year. The O-line is just, for a Sam Pittman team, it makes sense, right, that the O-line is taken care of. But these guys are just crazy experienced. They have a ton of reps under their belts, and it's going to be a good unit for Taylor Green to play behind. Now going through Arkansas's schedule, I had them going 2-0 against Alabama A&M and Arkansas State, dropping their first conference game at Ole Miss. I had them winning at Memphis in a nice little out-of-conference game. And then when Notre Dame comes to Fayetteville, that'll be a great environment, and I'll be cheering for them. But I do think that Notre Dame will beat them and hand them their second loss of the year. Then they get a bye week. I have them losing in Knoxville, Tennessee. I have them catching A&M at home and beating them. But then I have them losing on the road to Auburn before coming back and beating Mississippi State at home. Then they have their second bye week, and I have them losing their last 3 of the year at LSU, at Texas, and hosting Missouri to go 5-7 and 2-6 in conference play. The expectations for Arkansas really aren't that high. The Sam Pittman hot seat conversations are happening. It's hard to say exactly what 5-7 would do for that. It certainly wouldn't help them, but I'm not sure it's bad enough to have them go all the way. But we'll see. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see when we get there. Moving on now to Auburn. This is one of the teams that I'm really, really excited to watch play this year because of the amount of talent that Hugh Freeze has assembled over the past 3 years of being at Auburn. The results have not shown themselves on the field yet, which is a problem. But this is the year where he needs to pay it all off because he finally has his roster really all together. The highlight of it is the receiver room. You have Cam Coleman, who was a 5-star kid last year, had 37 catches for just about 600 yards and 8 touchdowns. And also Eric Singleton Jr., who is a transfer from Georgia Tech. He had 56 grabs last year for 754 yards and 3 touchdowns with Georgia Tech. This guy was probably the best receiver in the portal, and I think he could be one of the best receivers in the country this year. Now, he's not getting a ton of buzz because really he's behind Coleman, and the general consensus is Auburn is Auburn. Jackson Arnold isn't going to turn it around, which I think he will. And I think that Singleton's going to be a massive part of that. Speaking a little more on Arnold, I mean, this guy is a 5-star talent. We know that he has a great arm. And last year with Oklahoma, just everything was kind of a nightmare for the whole program, not even just him. I think it was just a bad situation. I think it wasn't where it needed to be. And I think that a fresh start in really a must-win year for Auburn, that energy will be there, that urgency will be there. And I think that he'll have a bounce-back year after only throwing for 1,400 yards last year, 12 touchdowns, and 3 picks. Talking about their O-line a little bit, which will obviously be a big part of Arnold's success, they have 2 transfers in at both tackle positions. The first is Xavier Chaplin at left tackle. He's coming in from Virginia Tech, who started all 12 last year for the Hokies. And then at right tackle is Mason Murphy, who is a grad transfer from USC, started all 12 for the Trojans last year also. So there's no lack of experience playing football with those guys, just there's a lack of experience playing with the other 3 on the line who have been at Auburn for a while. So we'll see how they mesh. We'll see how they come together. But it shouldn't be that big of an issue. They have a relatively young but a pretty talented secondary also. You're looking at Jay Crawford, who is a sophomore. He was SEC All-Freshman team last year, had 15 tackles, 7 pass breakups, and a pick. You got Caleb Harris, who is a true sophomore, played 12 and started 6 last year as a freshman, totaled 46 tackles, 3 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. And then Sylvester Smith, who is a redshirt sophomore. He was kind of a rotational safety, getting the splitting reps as a redshirt freshman last year, but played in 12 games, started 6 of them, and had 28 tackles. So the talent is there. The question is, will these guys make those jumps from being an underclassman to an upperclassman, or just from freshman to sophomore year, to really become an even better unit? And then you have guys like Keldrick Falk, obviously coming off the edge on defense for Auburn. He's a junior. 45 tackles, 11 TFLs, and 7 sacks last year. You look at Malik Blockton at defensive tackle, who played in 12 as a freshman last year. Only started 2 games, but he racked up 16 tackles, 4 TFLs in the second half. This is a guy who's incredibly talented, raw talent. We'll see if that freshman to sophomore jump really improves him a lot and makes him a force to be reckoned with on the defensive line. Going through Auburn's schedule now. I had them starting off 3-0 with that win at Baylor to open up the year, and then beating Ball State and South Alabama. Then I had them losing their next 2 at Oklahoma and at Texas A&M. Then a bye week. I had them dropping another game at home to Georgia. But then I have them not losing the rest of the year. They'll beat Missouri at home. They'll win at Arkansas. Then they get 4 straight home games to end the year with Kentucky, Vandy, bye week, Mercer, and then Alabama. I had them winning all 4 of those games to end up 9-3 and 5-3 in the SEC. Now, this would be a good year for Freeze, and it would buy him a 4th season. It wouldn't quite be enough to get to Atlanta with 3 conference losses. It might be enough to get you in the playoff. Because if they go 9-3 and Bama goes 9-3, let's just say I'm right about 2 things at the same time, they'd obviously have the nod over Bama having beaten them in Week 14. But you'll have to see how the rest of the field plays out. Is there an 11-1 ACC team who lost their conference championship they'll be outraged if they get in over that ACC team? We'll have to see. But 9-3 with wins over, Alabama, with wins over Missouri, with a win at Baylor, which is a good out-of-conference win. We'll have to see how that plays out. Quick coffee sip here. Next up, we got the Florida Gators. I think they're in a similar spot as Auburn and Hugh Freeze, where there's been patience with Billy Napier. There's been patience with the process, understanding where the program was. And now this is kind of the year, especially with the fact for Florida that they have DJ Lagway, who couldn't be more of a winning guy. They were 6-1 in games he started, but I don't like to count the Georgia game as his game because he went down in the first half, and they really had control of that game before he went down. But Lagway's back. It seemed like he got all the freshman picks out of him really just in that bowl game against Tulane. So I think that experience, the growth he'll have, will really make him a lot better this year. And obviously, I think that the running back tandem could be sneakily one of the best in the conference. They have Jaden Baugh, who's a sophomore. He was a freshman All-SEC guy last year. He was behind Monchell Johnson, really, but he got plenty of reps. He ran for 673 yards, 8 touchdowns on 5.1 yards per carry. And then Jacoby Jackson, who was a redshirt senior. He played in all 13 last year, only started 1 because he was really that third guy. But he had 95 carries for 509 yards and 7 touchdowns, really as that third running back. So that production, for not even being listed on the 2 deep, is really impressive, and I think it's really exciting for the Gator coaches and fans to think about what he can do with more reps. You look at their offensive line. Getting Jake Slaughter back to come back as a redshirt senior at center was absolutely massive. He's the centerpiece of the O-line. He was AP All-American first team last year as a team captain. He was 5th nationally graded out by PFF, and he's really the anchor of that line. And then you look at their receiver room. They have so many guys who could easily break out for like 700 yards this year. Obviously, they all won't because the ball's got to get spread around, but you have J. Michael Sturdivant, who's coming in from UCLA. You have Eugene Wilson, who is coming off. People are forgetting about Eugene Wilson, man. He had an incredible freshman year. Last year, he started 4 games before he just could not get back from injury, so he's a redshirt sophomore this year. 19 grabs for just over 200 yards and a score in that limited action last year. But this guy is an absolute playmaker, and if you forgot about him, you're going to be reminded really soon. They also have 2 5-star freshmen in Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown. Like, this receiver room is just absolutely full of guys who could, at any point, go for 100 yards on 2 scores in a certain game. So that's going to be really exciting to watch. Then you look at their secondary. There's a lot of experience in their secondary. You have Devin Moore, who's a senior at corner. You have Dijon Johnson, who's a junior at corner. You have Jordan Castell, who is a junior at strong safety. The thing with Castell is that his freshman year was incredible to watch. He was hitting hard. He was great in coverage. And then sophomore year, you kind of started to see some leaks. He wasn't a bad player at all. He was not a liability by any means. But you kind of saw some leaks that you didn't necessarily see his freshman year. He ended up with 55 tackles, 9 PBUs, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack, and played the most snaps on defense for the Gators. If he can kind of get back to, it sounds weird to say his freshman form, given that now he's a junior, but if he's able to kind of plug those holes he had last year, he can really be an anchor in the secondary. And then on the defensive line, you have Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks, who, similar to the receivers, on the D-line, Florida has multiple guys who could go for 2 sacks and like a forced fumble a game. Tyreek Sapp started in 9 last year for the Gators, had 7 sacks, 13 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. Caleb Banks, who started 10 last year, had 21 tackles, 7 TFLs, 4.5 sacks, and 2 more forced fumbles. So the D-line looks good. Really one of the questions is how do they replace Shamar James at linebacker? Miles Graham, who's a sophomore, figures to kind of be that guy to step in. He was freshman all at SEC last year, played in all 13 games, had 30 tackles, a sack, 2.5 TFLs, a pick, and a forced fumble. Filling in the shoes of Shamar James is going to be a tall task, but they're very confident in what Miles Graham can do, and he could definitely be a breakout guy and really almost have a seamless transition from Shamar to him this season. Looking at Florida's schedule, once again, it's one of the toughest in the nation. I had them starting off 2-0 with home games against Long Island and USF. The USF game is sneaky. Don't be surprised if that game's like tied or a field goal game at halftime. But I do have Florida winning that game. I think they'll lose that game on the road at Baton Rouge, but then I do have them getting revenge on Miami in week 4 to go 3-1 there. Then they have their bye week. I have Florida beating Texas at home, but then losing on the road to A&M the next week. That is such an impossible 2-week stretch, but going 1-1 would be a big win for the Gators there. I had them beating Mississippi State at home after that loss to A&M. Then their second bye week, I had them losing to Georgia, but then winning their last 4 at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, versus Tennessee, and versus Florida State. That'll put them at 9-3 overall and 5-3 in conference play. Similar to Auburn, Alabama, man. I mean, that's not going to get them to Atlanta, but 9-3. And if Florida will have the best case schedule-wise with a win over Texas, a win over Miami, who figures to be in ACC contention again, with a win over Ole Miss. Florida, out of those 3 teams I've said so far that might go 9-3, would have the best playoff resume. But again, it's the same thing. It'll come down to how the rest of the field plays out, and just so much more context that we just can't predict right now. Moving on now to the reigning SEC champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, the biggest question for them really is Gunnar Stockton. You know, how does he step in and fill the void that Carson Beck left? He came in for the SEC championship game, and they won that game. But then he started against Notre Dame. They couldn't really muster anything and dropped that one in the playoffs. So he only played in 5 games last year, had 230 total yards against Notre Dame, threw for a touchdown. But it'll be very interesting to see how he actually steps into that role and how he assumes the starting role and how effective he can be. He's helped out, though, by the experienced group of pass catchers that he has. He's got Oscar Delp, who's a senior at tight end. He played in all 14 last year, had 21 grabs for 248 yards and 4 touchdowns. They're bringing in Zachariah Branch, a transfer from USC, who's really a return specialist, but the guy has electric speed that you just can't wrap him up. He had 47 catches for 503 yards and a touchdown last year with USC. They bring back Dylan Bell, who's a senior, started 12 games last year, had 466 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Dogs last year. And then Colby Young, who's a senior, he only played in 5, started 2 last year, but he had 11 grabs for 149 in those 2 and 2 touchdowns. So it's a very veteran, experienced group of pass catchers. And obviously a good-looking offensive line. You have Monroe Fielding at left tackle, who is a junior. Micah Morris at left guard, who is a redshirt senior. Drew Bobo at center, who is a redshirt junior. Daniel Calhoun at right guard, who is a redshirt freshman. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how he pans out in his first season as a starting right guard. And then you have Ernest Green III, who is a redshirt junior at right tackle. Obviously, Georgia is Georgia. I'm not worried about the talent level of this team at all. It's just interesting to now see them with such a new face at quarterback, kind of out of nowhere, not knowing that Carson Beck would be gone this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Looking at their secondary also, they have a lot of experience in their secondary. The only guy who is not experienced is KJ Bolden, who was an all-freshman in the SEC last year. He played in 14 games, only started 2, but saw action every week, had 59 tackles, a sack, a pick, and a forced fumble. And then going through the rest of it, you have Daniel Harris at corner, who is a junior, had 22 tackles last year. Dalen Everett, who is a senior at corner, who was a third-team All-SEC, according to the coaches, had 3 picks, 2 forced fumbles last year. You have Ja'Cory Thomas at strong safety, who is a senior. He played in all 14, only started 3 last year, so just more of a guy in the reserves who had 7 tackles last year. So it's really a lot of experience, a lot of guys who understand the grind of playing every week in the SEC, and then just this absolute stud in KJ Bolden. So Georgia are going to be totally fine in the secondary. I'm excited to see Elo Medozi at the coming off the edge. He's a transfer from Army who had 34 tackles, 6.5 sacks last year. He's really the guy coming back for Georgia on the D-line, not coming back, but who will be on the D-line this year with the most experience. You have Gabe Harris Jr., who is a junior, played in 14 last year for Georgia, but only started 1, had 14 tackles and 2 sacks. You have Jordan Hall, who's a junior at D-tackle, who played in 6 last season, really just as a reserve guy. And then Christian Miller, who is a redshirt junior, who played in 12, started 10, had 27 tackles and 3.5 TFLs. So you look at Medozi, he's coming in from Army, but he really has sort of the best resume of any guy on this defensive line for Georgia. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly if he leaves that room, really, and how quickly he steps in. going through Georgia's schedule, I'm really not worried about them at all this year. I think they start 3-0 with wins over Marshall, Austin Peay, and at Tennessee. They have their bye week, win their next 4, hosting Alabama and Kentucky, at Auburn, and then hosting Ole Miss again. Get their second bye week where they'll beat Florida and beat Mississippi State on the road. So I have them being 9-0, but then I have them losing their home game to Texas, beating Charlotte, obviously, and then I have them losing on the road. It's in Mercedes-Benz, but to Georgia Tech to end the year. So I had them going 10-2 and 7-1 in the SEC. That is top of the SEC in my prediction, so they'll be in Atlanta again. And 10-2 obviously will be enough to get this Georgia team back in the playoff. And we'll see if they're able to kind of use last year as a chip on their shoulder, get into the Sugar Bowl, having everything that happened there, getting it pushed back a day, throwing everybody off, and then losing that game really in dry fashion. We all know who Kirby Smart is as a motivator, so I would assume that is a very strong sticking point to get Georgia back into the national championship picture again this year. Moving on to Kentucky. This is one of these schools. Maybe it's the only school. I don't know, but I'm not sure that Mark Stoops is the coach of Kentucky in 2026. And if he is, it's going to be because Zal Calzada, their grad transfer at quarterback, played really well. He's coming in from Incarnate Word, but he spent his first 2 years with stops at A&M and Auburn. And last year with Incarnate Word, he threw for 3,700 yards and 35 touchdowns, also ran for 332 and 5 more scores. So this guy's really a great player. The question is, are there enough tools around him to be successful? At receiver, they get Kendrick Law, the transfer from Alabama, who's really more of a kick return guy. But over his career, he has 33 catches for 343 yards and a score. You also have Jamori Macklin, who is a redshirt senior. He came in from North Texas prior to last season. Played in 12, started 3 for the Wildcats last year, had 13 grabs for 313 yards and 4 scores. And then I think that Willie Rodriguez, their sophomore tight end, I think he's going to have a breakout year. He played in all 12 as a freshman, only started 3, had 5 grabs for 94 yards, but this guy has the physical profile and will not have that tight end role to himself. I think he's going to be a really good player. So look out for him this year. And obviously Kentucky has a veteran big O-line, redshirt senior, grad, redshirt senior, junior, grad. They got 2 redshirt seniors and 2 graduates on their offensive line. There's really no worry there about inexperience and the lack of ability. And then defensively on the front 7, they have several transfers. One of them is McQueese Humphrey Grace coming off the edge. He transferred in from South Dakota. He has 101 tackles on his career, 26 TFLs and 15 sacks. So he's been producing through his first 2 or 3 years of college. We'll see if he can keep doing it. Also transferring off the edge is USC. No, not as USC, is Sam Green from USC. He's a redshirt sophomore. He played in 14 last year, has 16 total tackles, 3 TFLs and a sack. And then D tackle, David Gusta is a transfer from Washington State. He had 62 tackles last year, 6 TFLs, and 1.5 sacks. Excuse me, that's for his career. He's a redshirt senior. Who's tallied those numbers? And then at linebacker, they have 2 returning guys, and DeVaron Rayner, who just played in 4 last year, so he redshirted, and then Alex Afari Jr., who played in 12, started 6, had 62 tackles, 11 TFLs, a sack and a half, and a pass breakup. And then looking at Kentucky's secondary also, they really just bring back most of their guys from last year. I'm really excited to see Quaysheed Scott, who played really nickel last year. He was a sophomore. He played in 11 games, missed the Tennessee game with injury. He was a former 4-star guy who only had 6 tackles last year just because he was kind of growing into his role. But I'm very excited to see how he plays this year. Also, Jordan Lovett, who is a redshirt senior at free safety. He started every game last year, had 63 tackles, 2 picks, a TFL, and a pass breakup. So I'm excited to see how those guys play in the back end again this year. But now going through Kentucky's schedule, I have a pretty pessimistic view of this. I had them beating Toledo in week 1, losing to Ole Miss week 2, and then taking care of Eastern Michigan in week 3 before their first bye week. Then they have they just play 2 road games before their second bye week against South Carolina and Georgia. I had them losing both of those. Then I had them losing to Texas at home. They'll beat Tennessee at home. I had them getting that one, sort of a mild upset. I had them losing to Auburn and Florida. Auburn's on the road. I had them beating Tennessee Tech at home, and then losing their last 2 at Vandy and at Louisville to go 4-8 overall and 1-7 in the SEC. So I think the conversations about Stoops, they've already been kind of loud this offseason. And I think that with a 4-8 year, it might be time to move on for the Wildcats. Next, we have the LSU Tigers. Now, this is a team that's got playoff hopes. It's not a prove-it year for Brian Kelly, but it's definitely a you should get this done now year for Brian Kelly before we have those conversations. Obviously, the roster is centered around Garrett Nussmeier, who he's getting buzzed for a Heisman contender. If he can just clean up his interceptions, he threw 12 of those last year, then he'll definitely be in that race because he threw for 4,000 yards and 29 scores also. Caden Durham, who is the sophomore running back, he was freshman All-SEC last year, ran for 753 yards and 6 scores. And then at receiver, they brought in 2 transfers to really bolster that room up. The first is Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, who is a redshirt junior. He only played in 1 game last year because of injury. But over his career, he has 31 grabs for 800 yards and 10 scores. And then also Barian Brown, who is a senior from Kentucky. He was a first-team All-SEC at returner, second-team SEC in all-purpose. I mean, this guy is just like a true Swiss Army knife gadget. You'll never be able to tackle him kind of guy in open field. So he'll be very exciting to watch. And then you have Aaron Anderson, who is a redshirt junior. He played in 13, started 9 games last year, caught 61 passes for 884 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then on the defensive side of the ball, their edge rushers are both transfers. The first is Jack Pyburn from Florida, who's a senior. He had 60 tackles, 4 TFLs, and a sack with the Gators last year. And the second is Patrick Payton, who is a redshirt senior coming in from FSU. He started all 12 games for the Noles last year, tallied 35 tackles, 11 TFLs, and 4 sacks. Harold Perkins Jr., by the way, is still there. His freshman year, this was like the most exciting linebacker prospect we've seen in a long time. Last year was cut short due to a knee injury, but I mean, this guy's still there. He's still just as good of a player as he was when he was a freshman All-SEC in 2022. I'm excited to see him play again. And obviously, Whit Weeks is still there at linebacker also. He's a junior who was first-team All-SEC last year, had 125 tackles, 10 TFLs, 3.5 sacks. He stepped up for Perkins in his absence really well. And now if both of those two guys stay healthy and can play together, it's going to get very, very scary. In the secondary, you've got Ashton Stamps at corner, who's a junior, started all 13 games for the Tigers last year. Mansour Delane, who is a senior transfer from Virginia Tech, started all 12 for the Hokies last season and was third-team All-ACC. Tamarcus Cooley, who is an NC State transfer at nickel, who is a redshirt sophomore. Jordan Gilbert, who is a redshirt senior at strong safety, coming back for the Tigers after playing all 13 last year. And then A.J. Hawley at free safety, who is a transfer in from Houston. Now, it is notable that they have 3 transfers predicted to start in their secondary, but all these guys are proven contributors who have just done it at other places. Now they're coming to it at LSU. So I wouldn't be too worried about that overall. Looking at LSU's schedule now, I have them losing that opener at Clemson. Just because it's LSU, they have to lose their first game. That is a rule. And then they'll win their next 3 against LA Tech, Florida, and Southeast Louisiana before they go to Oxford and lose to Ole Miss. Then they have their bye week. I have them winning their next 3 at home against South Carolina, at Vandy, and versus Texas A&M. Then it's their second bye week. I had them losing at Alabama, beating Arkansas, beating Western Kentucky, but then losing at Oklahoma to end the year to go 8-4 and 5-3. Now this is definitely a disappointing result. To not make it to Atlanta and to lose 4 games and not make the playoff would definitely raise a lot of concerns about, why hasn't Brian Kelly done it yet? There's already a lot of people who don't understand how he didn't make anything happen when he had Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas on the same offense. And now you've got Garrett Nussmeier, who is a Heisman candidate at quarterback. Like, how much does Kelly need to win at LSU? That's obviously, those are the conversations if this happens. It might not, but it might. But yeah, 8-4 would not be enough for LSU, but given their schedule and how their roster is built up, that's how I see this going down. Next up is one that I'm going to talk through quickly. It's Mississippi State. Spoiler alert, I have them losing every SEC game. Yeah. I mean, so at quarterback they have Blake Shapen, who's a grad transfer. He started 4 games last year before a medical redshirt. He had 974 yards, 8 scores, and a touchdown before he got hurt. At running back, you've got guys like Fluff Bothwell, who is a sophomore transfer from South Alabama. He's actually an exciting guy to watch. I look forward to seeing him play this year. He was second team All Sun Belt in 2024. Had 112 carries for 834 yards and 13 scores. At receiver, they've got Marcus Allen, who is a redshirt senior transfer from Eastern Michigan, who had 650 yards and 3 scores last year. You also have Aiden Williams Jr., who is an Ole Miss transfer, who only had 3 catches last season. And then Brennan Thompson, who is an Oklahoma transfer, who is a senior, who had 19 grabs for 230 yards and 2 scores last season. So a full receiver room full of transfers. Really just a lot of transfers on this team overall. You have Red Hibbler on defense now. Red Hibbler coming off the edge. He is an NC State transfer who is a graduate. Will Whitson is a grad transfer from Coastal Carolina at D tackle. You have Jalen Smith at linebacker coming from Tennessee. You have Dwight Lewis III, who's coming in from Marion at corner. You have Jerron Manning, who's coming from Old Dominion at free safety. So 18 of their projected starters were transfers at one point in their career, and 11 of them are transfers this season. So having that much newness and that sort of lack of continuity is going to make this year even harder for Mississippi State, more so than I think it already is. Like I said, I have them losing every conference game. Out of conference, I have them beating Southern Miss, losing to Arizona State, beating Alcorn State, and beating NIU. But that is it. I've got a 3-9 year for Mississippi State. I've got 0-8 in conference. Ever since the Mike Leach situation, that program's really been searching for answers, and it's kind of hard to blame them because of how quickly and how unpredictable that whole thing was. And they'll be looking for answers again after this offseason, I think. Moving on now to Missouri. Missouri's got enough going on for them where there's some optimism. Their schedule isn't overly difficult, but for whatever reason, I've had a kind of a hard time getting there with the Tigers this year. I do believe in Drinkwitz, but we'll have to see how this fall plays out. At quarterback, they've got Bo Pribula, who is the grad transfer coming in from Penn State. He was behind Drew Aller for his whole time at Penn State. And last year when Aller went down at Wisconsin, Penn State was trailing at halftime. Bo came in and won them that game. So you know that he's not necessarily, he's not scared of the light at all, which is a good sign for Missouri. At running back, I'm looking forward to seeing Ahmad Hardy, who is a sophomore transfer coming in from ULM. He was a 2024 freshman All-American who carried the ball 237 times last year for 1,351 yards and 13 touchdowns. Those numbers are incredible. Obviously, running at ULM is different than running at Missouri, but the talent is there, and I'm excited to see how he translates his game to the SEC. At receiver, they have to replace a lot of talent. They're filling in for Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, all those guys. So they have Marquise Johnson, who is a junior. He played in all 12 last year, only started 2, had 352 yards and a score for Missouri last season. Also Joshua Manning, who is a junior. He played in all 13 and started 7, had 13 catches for 192 yards and a touchdown. And then they have Kevin Coleman Jr., who is a senior Mississippi State transfer. He caught 74 passes for 932 yards and 6 scores last year. So Coleman kind of figures he's the guy coming into that room with the most experience, but he is the newcomer as opposed to guys who have been in the program for a while. So we'll see how that all plays out. At offensive line, they have Johnny Williams IV, who is a transfer in from West Virginia, and then Kagan Trost at right tackle, who is a transfer from Wake Forest. So 2 tackles who are transfers. The interior of that O-line has all been there before. Logan Reichert at right guard, he only played 122 snaps in his career. So it'll be interesting to see. He's a redshirt sophomore. We'll see how comfortable he gets with a grad in Connor Tollison at center and a junior in Caden Green at left guard. So he has experience around him, but we'll see if he's exploitable for defenses early on. Going on to the defensive side of the ball, you have Damon Wilson II, who is a transfer from Georgia. He had 26 tackles, 6 TFLs, and 3.5 sacks last year to go along with 2 forced fumbles. On their interior of their defensive line, Chris McClellan, who is a senior, is a very solid player. He played in all 13, started 9 last year, had 39 tackles, 5.5 TFLs, and 2.5 sacks. And then I'm very excited to see they have 2 transfers on the defensive side of the ball that I think are going to make or break them as a unit. The first is Josiah Trotter. He is a redshirt sophomore at linebacker. He's coming in from West Virginia. He was a 2024 freshman All-American. He played in 12 games and started 11 for the Mountaineers, had 92 tackles, 4 TFLs, half a sack, a pick, and a pass breakup. And then the other one is Jalen Catalon at free safety. He is a grad transfer from UNLV. But for your other SEC people who recognize that name, he did also have stops at Arkansas and Texas before going out to Vegas. But last year he had 14 starts at UNLV. He had 96 tackles, 5 TFLs, 2 sacks, 5 picks, and 4 pass breakups. So those two guys, you have one in the secondary and you have one at linebacker who are kind of coming in. They're bringing in fresh energy. They're bringing in a ton of talent. If those two guys can set the tone for the defense, that could be a very good unit. I said if, because I'm not totally sure that it will, and I think that my record prediction really factored that in. So I had them starting off 3-0 with wins against Central Arkansas, Kansas, and ULL. Then I had them losing their first game at home to South Carolina, beating UMass at home, and then heading into their first bye week. Coming out of the bye, I had them losing at home to Bama, losing on the road to Auburn, but beating Vanderbilt in Nashville. Then they get their second bye week, and then I had them going 2-2 over their Final Four with a loss to Texas A&M, a win against Mississippi State, a loss at Oklahoma, and a win at Arkansas to end the year to go 7-5 and 3-5. So 7-5 is definitely below expectation for this Missouri team, but there's just so much unknown when you bring in a transfer at quarterback, a transfer at running back. You're the best receiver coming back for you as a transfer. You have 2 transfers at the tackle position. You have transfers on your defense, like I said, I believe are going to be very important to determining how good that unit is. With all those unknowns, it's just hard for me to be super confident that this team can be super successful this year in the SEC. Up next is the team that I think I'm most excited to watch play really in the country this next year, and that's the Oklahoma Sooners. I think that this team is being way overlooked as a contender in both the SEC and for the college football playoff, in large part because of John Mateer, who's their quarterback, transferring in from Washington State. There's less value in this because there was only 2 teams last year, but he was the Pac-12 Offensive Performer of the Year last season. But he would have won that really in any conference because he had a 64% completion percentage, threw for over 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks, and also ran the ball 178 times for 826 yards and 15 touchdowns. Now, that 44 touchdowns responsible for number, that was the best in the country out of everybody. So he won the Pac-12 Offensive Award among 8 other guys who might have been in the running for it, but he really would have won that in any conference. And then at running back, he has a ton of help in Jaden Ott, who is the transfer from Cal, who he got hurt last season, so people are kind of forgetting about how good this guy is. But in 2023, he ran the ball 245 times for 1,300 yards and 12 scores. Before his injury last year, he had 116 carries for 385 and 4. I mean, this guy's one of the best running backs in the country when he's healthy. And they also have Javonte Barnes, who is a senior, played 9 last year for Oklahoma to back him up. And then at receiver, they're bringing in Giovanni Gibson from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He's a redshirt junior who had 70 grabs for 1,200 yards and 9 scores last year. You have Jaden Gibson, who is a redshirt junior, missed all of last year with an injury, but in 23, he played in 13 games, had 14 grabs for 375 yards and 5 touchdowns. 14 catches for 375 is a pretty legit average, by the way. That's well over 20 yards a catch. And tight end, they have Will Huggins, who is a redshirt senior. He's transferring in from Pittsburgh State. Played in 11 last year for whatever their mascot is, had 22 grabs for 395 yards and a touchdown. Looking at their offensive line, the left side of it is very young. You have Logan Howland, who is a redshirt sophomore at left tackle, who started 6 games last year. Heath Ozeta, who is also a redshirt sophomore at left guard, started 8 games last year. You have Troy Everett at center, who is a redshirt senior. He missed his first 5 games from injury last year, but then started 7 of the last 8. You have Fabichi Nwaiwu, who is a redshirt senior at right guard, who started all 13 last year for the Sooners. And then Jake Taylor, who is a redshirt junior at right tackle, who only played 4 games due to injury. The injury luck that Oklahoma had last year, I think, doesn't get talked about in terms of why their season went the way it did. I mean, I just went through 3 of their starting O-linemen who missed just about half the season. There were more. Sorry, 1 second. You had Kendall Dolby in the secondary, who started 3 games before he had a season-ending injury. You had Gentry Williams at the corner, who played 2 games before his season-ending injury. Like, the amount of season-ending and altering injuries they had last year is crazy. But that's whatever. I'm not there right now. Coming off the edge, you have Marvin Jones Jr., who's transferring in from Florida State. He started 9 games for the Noles last year, had 25 tackles, 6 TFLs, and 4 sacks. You also have R. Mason Thomas, who was all SEC second team last year. He played in 13, started 11, had 23 tackles, 12 and a half TFLs, and 9 sacks. Jaden Jackson at defensive tackle. He is a sophomore. He was an ESPN freshman All-American last year. Played in 13 games, started 10 of them, had 30 tackles with 3 TFLs and 2 sacks. And then in their secondary, along with the guys who I just mentioned who got injured last year, you have Eli Bowen at corner. He's also a sophomore who was a freshman All-American last year. Played in 11 games, had 30 tackles, 2 TFLs, a pick, and 4 pass breakups. Like, this roster last year really was full of underclassmen and then people who kept breaking limbs. And now it's full of upperclassmen to returning players who are back from injuries, developing from freshmen to sophomores, and are, injury luck figures to turn around for this team. They're going to be so good. And some of the biggest concerns with transfer quarterbacks is the changing in scheme, not being comfortable. Oklahoma went out and got John Mateer from Washington State, and then Venables also brought Ben Arbuckle, Mateer's offensive coordinator with the Cougars, over with him also. So there's none of that learning process for Mateer learning the new scheme. So he's been comfortable all spring, comfortable all summer. There's none of that transition process that I think is really going to help Oklahoma overall this year. Now, going through their schedule, I have them winning their first 6. Illinois State, Michigan, at Temple, Auburn, bye week, Kent State, and then I have them beating Texas in the Red River rivalry to be 6-0. But then I have them losing at South Carolina in kind of a letdown spot after that Texas game to go to 6-1. Then they'll beat Ole Miss at home. I think they'll beat Tennessee and Neyland, get a bye week. I had them losing at Alabama, but then beating both Missouri and LSU to end the season 10-2 and 6-2 in the SEC. Now, I don't want to spoil the rest of the previews, but with their 6-2 record and one of their losses specifically, if my predictions would say they won't get to Atlanta, but 10-2 will definitely be enough to make to get a playoff bid, especially with some of the wins they'll have over Texas. They'll have a win over LSU, win over Ole Miss. So if this is true, if my prediction is correct, they'll definitely make the playoff and surprise a lot of people this year in Norman. Now on to Ole Miss. Really, the biggest news here is Austin Simmons is going to be their starting quarterback. He's coming in for Jackson Dart now. He was behind Dart last year. He's a redshirt sophomore. He showed up in 9 games last year, but really didn't have any meaningful snaps. So the talent for Simmons is there. He was a very highly touted recruit. He's starting as a redshirt sophomore for a reason. But obviously that youth is it's a worry because you just don't know how he's going to react to being the guy now for this team. And the receiver room, it's a lot of new faces to the program, but they're proven names. First is Dejon Stribling, who is a redshirt senior coming in from Oklahoma State. Last year he had 52 grabs for 882 yards and 6 touchdowns. They also bring in Harrison Wallace III, who is a redshirt senior coming in from Penn State. He caught 46 passes for 720 yards and 4 scores. And then their one returning receiver is Caden Lee. He's a junior. Last year he was all SEC third team. He played in 13 games, had 57 grabs for 874 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their offensive line looks pretty strong. They have Diego Pounds at left tackle, who is a redshirt junior, started in 9 games for Ole Miss last year. They have Delano Townsend, who is a redshirt sophomore coming in from UAB. We'll see how that pans out. Bryson Sanders at center. He is a redshirt sophomore who played in 13 last year, mainly on special teams. So we'll see how he adapts to a primary role at center. They have Patrick Kudus, who is a senior right guard transferring in from Arkansas. You definitely trust Sam Pittman guys. And then Jaden Williams, who is a redshirt senior at right tackle, who played in 6 and started 4 games last year before getting injured. Going to the defensive side of the ball for Ole Miss, Sunshine Perkins, who is a junior linebacker. Very excited to see him play. He was all SEC third team last year, racked up 60 tackles, 14 TFLs, and 10.5 sacks. Looking at their defensive line, coming off the edge, Deshaun Womack is coming from LSU. He only racked up 8 tackles in the sack last year, but he definitely has the profile and the potential to be a great player for him. And then going into their secondary, I was a little surprised that this was even legal. Every projected starter in Ole Miss's secondary is a transfer. You have Ricky Fletcher, who's coming from South Alabama. One more on him in a second. You also have Jalen Braxton, who is coming in from Arkansas. You have Kapina Gushikin coming in from Washington State, who had 52 tackles and 2 picks last year. Sage Ryan coming in from LSU, who had 43 tackles, a pick, 3 forced fumbles, 4 pass breakups. And then Wyatt Williams Jr., who's coming from ULM. He had 55 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and 3 picks. So you have those guys, those last 3 guys, Gushikin, Ryan, and Williams Jr. They produced last year. They were good players. You're just dealing with the basic transitioning of moving programs. Ricky Fletcher and Jalen Braxton, both their projected starting corners, really didn't play last year. Ricky Fletcher missed all of last year with a stress fracture in his lower back, and Jalen Braxton had a fractured kneecap and barely played last year. So it'll be interesting to see how those 2 guys come into a new program. For Fletcher elevating from South Alabama to Ole Miss, Braxton's just going still through in the SEC, but not playing for a year is hard at any position. I think it's very challenging at corner, so we'll see how those guys adjust. Going through the Rebels' schedule, I have them starting off, 6-0. I have them beating Georgia State on the road against Kentucky, getting a win. I had them beating Arkansas and Tulane at home. I had them also beating LSU at home. Then they'll have their bye week. I had them beating Washington State. I don't even know why they're playing them, but that's kind of a cool matchup. Then I had them losing their next 3 at Georgia, at Oklahoma, and hosting South Carolina. I think they dropped their next 3 after starting off 6-0. I had them beating the Citadel. I had them losing to Florida at home. Then they get a bye week before they go on the road and beat Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl to go 8-4 and 4-4. So the way that I see it, Kiffin misses out yet again on a playoff berth, really by just a game or 2. I mean, you could argue, well, if Ole Miss does start 6-0, like I think they might, the playoff balls will be there. This team will be top 10, and it'll be like, this is finally the year that they get it. And then let's say I'm right about them losing to Georgia and Oklahoma, and then you get Carolina and Florida both at home. You just don't lose both of those games and you get in. But if they do, you kind of have to start asking questions about, can Kiffin really get this done as a headman at Ole Miss? Because if not now, then when? I mean, well, I guess next year. But if they don't do it now, I think people will really look at it as, last year was their chance. You had Dart. You had all those guys on defense. All you have to do is not throw 2 picks in 90 seconds in Gainesville. But they did. So we'll see if this is the year they get over the hump. I just don't think it is for Ole Miss this year. Moving on now to South Carolina. Really, all I have to say to you is Lenore Sellers, and I think I could easily convince you that this team will win 8 or 9 games. I don't even talk to you about Sellers. Everybody knows who he is, what he's done. I don't need to waste your time with that. Roswell Faison, the grad transfer from Utah State who's having waiver issues. First off, he should be able to play. And if he is, the Gamecocks are getting an awesome guy to step in for Raheem Sanders. Last year, Faison had 198 carries, 1,100 yards, and 8 scores. And then at receiver, everybody who plays the college football video game knows who Nick Harbor is. I mean, the guy's 6'5", has 99 speed, and that's real. He has the physical abilities to be a freak, but he's still developing how to be a true receiver and perfecting that craft. Last year, he had 26 catches for 376 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also at receiver, you have Mezeo Bennett Jr., who's a sophomore. He played in every game last year as a true freshman. Caught 30 passes for 336 yards and 3 touchdowns. There's some youth on the offensive line, mainly on the left side. You have Josiah Thompson, who at left tackle, who is a sophomore. He was a true freshman All-American last year, so there's a lot of confidence in what he can do. Started 12 games last year for the Cox. You have Tree Babalade, who is a redshirt sophomore at left guard. He only put in 4 last year during his redshirt, and he did have a start at left tackle for the one game that Thompson was injured. At center, they have Boaz Stanley, who is a redshirt junior transfer from Troy. He started all 12 games last year on that O-line, 7 of which were at center. You have Trevon Ball, who is a junior at right guard. Played in 12 of 13 last year, mainly on special teams, so he'll have to transition to a full-time role on the OL as well. And then Kason Henry, who is a redshirt junior at right tackle. This is your guy you can rely on because he started all 13 games last year at right tackle for Carolina, and he's right back there again. On defense, Dylan Stewart, the sophomore last year, who was a true freshman All-American, who had 6.5 sacks, 10.5 TFLs, 3 forced fumbles, 23 tackles. The guy's an absolute monster coming off the edge, and he should be again this year. At defensive tackle, they have Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, who's coming from Texas A&M. He is a redshirt junior. He only played in 2 games last year, so we'll have to see how he bounces back this year now that he'll be expected to really contribute a good bit. Looking at their linebackers, you have Justin Okoronkwo, who is a sophomore transfer from Alabama. He played in all 13 last year on defense, but mostly special teams. Tallied half of a TFL last year. So we'll see, again, similar to Brownlow Dindy, how he steps into a full-time playing role. And their secondary, I'm pretty excited to watch. You have Brendan Sissy, who's coming from NC State at corner. He is a junior. You have Judge Collier, who was a second-team All-SEC guy last year. Had 8 pass breakups and 28 tackles. Jalon Kilgore at nickel, who is a junior. He was second-team All-SEC. Had 5 picks, 3 TFLs last year. Peyton Williams at safety, who is a redshirt junior, had 19 tackles and 2 PBU as kind of a rotational guy last year. Excuse me. And then DQ Smith at free safety, who started all 12 games last year for Carolina. Had 37 tackles, a pick, and a forced fumble. Going through Carolina's schedule now, I had them starting off 5-0 with wins over Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, at Missouri, and against Kentucky. So they'll be 5-0 going into their bye week. You have all week before they go to LSU, hyping it up as a revenge spot, a big-time game. This might be a college game day game even. But I have Carolina losing that game in Baton Rouge to LSU, but then winning their next 3, hosting Oklahoma, Alabama, and at Ole Miss. That's a huge 3-game stretch for Carolina. So to go 3-0, and that would be massive. Then I have their bye week, and then I had them losing 2 of their last 3. I had them losing at A&M. They'll beat Coastal Carolina at home, and then I had them losing to Clemson in Columbia to go 9-3 and 6-2 in the SEC. So this was kind of my spoiler. If I'm right about Carolina going 6-2 and right about everything else, which I'm definitely not, obviously, but if they do go 6-2 and this is how it plays out, they'll have a win over Oklahoma and therefore have the tiebreaker to go to Atlanta and play Georgia for the conference championship, which would be an incredible year for Beamer. He's obviously building a very strong program. Having Sellers at quarterback, the sky is really the limit for this team. They just can't. You can't drop a bad game, and just for example, last year that LSU game, you can say what you want about the referees, that pick 6. I would say I agree with that, but still, don't leave it in the hands of the refs and you win that game. So Carolina can do this. They just need to not drop games that they shouldn't, and we'll see how far they make it this year. Now for the Tennessee Volunteers. Obviously, the biggest story was the Nico situation, and it's hard to really blame Tennessee for not having a great option at quarterback now because of how sudden that all was. But I really am not very high on Joey Aguilar. Coming from App State, he's a senior. Last year he threw for 3,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. That is the good to okay. He had a 55.9% completion percentage and 14 picks. That is the awful and to terrible. That's just not going to work in the SEC. You're going to have bigger defensive linemen barreling at you, making you get rid of the ball quicker. You're going to have faster corners breaking on the ball. If he hasn't really progressed in terms of his decision-making and being able to take care of the ball, it could get ugly. There could be 2 picks a game and still around that 55% completion mark, which would not be good enough. But he does have some very good receivers to throw the ball to, which could help him. You have Mike Matthews, who is a sophomore. He was a 5-star recruit in 2024. He played in 11 last year, but didn't contribute that much. Only 7 catches for 90 yards and 2 scores. But that guy's incredibly talented. You have Chris Brazzell II, who is a redshirt junior. He came in from Tulane before last season. He had 29 grabs and 333 yards and 2 scores in 2024. And then you have Braylon Staley, who is a redshirt freshman. 4-star recruit in the same class as Mike Matthews, but he obviously redshirted last year. But another very talented guy for Aguilar to try and throw the ball to. On their O-line now, you have Lance Hurd, who is a junior left tackle. The guy was a former 5-star. He transferred in from LSU before last season. Only saw 73 snaps last year, but we know that he has the talent there. You have Sam Pendleton at left guard. He is a redshirt sophomore coming in from Notre Dame. He played in 13 and started 7 for that Irish team last year that made their run at the championship. You have William Satterwhite, a redshirt freshman, who is a center. He was a 4-star 2 years ago, redshirted. We'll see how he adapts to the starting role. Wendell Moe Jr. at right guard. He is a redshirt junior from Arizona State. who played in 12 and started 11 last year. In 760 snaps, Wendell Moe did not allow a sack or get called for a flag. So he's a very good player to have on that line. And then at right tackle, you figured to have David Sanders Jr., who is going to be a true freshman. He was the top offensive tackle in last year's class and just a top 5 player overall, according to both Rivals and ESPN. On the defensive side of the ball, you have guys like Joshua Josephs, who is a senior coming off the edge. He was the 3rd highest graded defender in the SEC last year, according to PFF. Had 39 tackles, a sack and a half, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. At D tackle, guys like David Hobbs, who's a junior, he was a former 5-star guy. Only had 20 tackles and a sack last year, but we know that the talent is there. Arion Carter Jr. at linebacker. I'm excited to see him play. He started all 13 last year as a sophomore. Tallied 68 tackles, 6.5 TFLs, a pick, and 6 pass breakups. And then the secondary should be very good for Tennessee. You have Jermod McCoy, who's a junior at corner. He was a Thorpe semifinalist last year. Had 13 pass breakups and 4 picks. Ricky Gibson III at junior. He really busted on the scene last year. Had 32 tackles, a forced fumble, and 3 pass breakups. Andre Turrentine, a redshirt senior at strong safety. Started all 12 last year for the Vols there. Had 37 tackles, a pick, and 3 pass breakups. And then you have Ajus Farouk at free safety. He's a sophomore. Rotational guy as a freshman with only 13 tackles. We'll see how effective he can be in the secondary. Going through Tennessee's schedule now, I am high on their defense, like I just said, but I'm having a very hard time getting excited and confident about their offense. So that being said, I have them beating Syracuse and ETSU to start off 2-0. They'll lose that game to Georgia 2-1, and then they'll beat UAB and go on the road and beat Mississippi State to be 4-1 heading into their bye week. I had them coming out of the bye week and beating Arkansas to go 5-1, and then I kind of have things going off the rails a little bit. They'll lose at Alabama, they'll lose at Kentucky, they'll lose to Oklahoma. Then they have a bye week. They'll beat New Mexico State at home coming off that bye. But then I think they'll lose in Gainesville to Florida and then beat Vandy at home to end the year at 7-5 overall and 3-5 in the SEC. Now, that is definitely below expectation for Tennessee as a program. But in the context of what they've had to deal with Nico and how admirably that whole program really handled that situation, you're not going to have most people looking at Heupel saying, what's going on? Why can't you keep winning? That won't be the case. I think that they'll struggle a little bit this year just because of everything that happened around them. But there should be absolutely no real worry about how that coaching staff and administration can win football games because they've proven that they can do it. You just need to have one less quarterback ruining everything for you. Moving on now to Texas A&M. Marcel Reed will be the quarterback this year full-time now, which I think is going to be electric to watch. He'll be a redshirt sophomore. He appeared in 11 games last year. Threw for over 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Also ran for 547 and 7 touchdowns. And his running mate literally will be Reuben Owens, who is a sophomore. People are forgetting how good this guy is. In 2023 as a freshman, he only had 100 carries for 385 and 3 scores. But, in August last year, other coaches were terrified of what this guy was going to do. And then he got hurt in fall camp and didn't play. He's going to come back this year and I think quite literally run through multiple defenses, and then people will remember exactly who he is. At receiver, A&M's got Mario Craver, who is a sophomore coming in from Mississippi State. Had 17 grabs for 368 and 3 scores last year. Terry Bussey is a sophomore. He was a former 5-star guy, I believe the top athlete in his recruiting class. He had 17 grabs for 216 and 16 carries for 102 and 2 scores last year. His role will increase this fall. I think he's an incredibly dynamic playmaker. And then they also brought in Casey Concepcion from NC State. He's a junior who had 53 grabs for 460 and 6 touchdowns last year. And another transfer pass catcher is Amari Niblack, who came in from Texas, spent time at Bama before that. He's a senior now. Didn't play a whole lot, but this is a big-bodied guy who both Bama and Texas like the idea of. So you know that the talent is there, the potential is there. And we'll see if he can unlock it. Defensively, they bring in TJ Searcy from Florida coming off the edge, who had 34 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles last year. You have Cassius Howell, who's a redshirt senior, who had 4 sacks, 7 pass deflections last year as a D lineman, is very good. At D tackle, you have Tyler Onyedim, who is a redshirt senior transfer from Iowa State. 33 tackles, a fumble recovery, and a PBU last year. In the secondary, you have Des Ricks, who played in 9 games last year as a redshirt freshman. 20 tackles, got a pick for him and 2 PBUs. You have Jordan Shaw, who's coming in from Washington. He'll be at the nickel spot. Also a redshirt sophomore. Played in all 13 last year for the Huskies. Had 37 tackles, a fumble recovery, and 6 pass breakups. And then in terms of some more experienced returners, they have Dalton Brooks at strong safety, who is a junior. Played in 12 last year, racked up 59 tackles, a sack, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. And then Bryce Anderson, who is a senior at free safety. Played in all 12 games, but didn't really blow you out of the water with the box score. 24 tackles, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. Going through their schedule now, I've got A&M starting off 6-0. They'll beat UTSA, Utah State, and I think that they go to South Bend and beat Notre Dame in what will be a pretty big upset for them. Then they'll have their bye week. They'll beat Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida at home. Then they'll go on the road. I think that Arkansas gets them in Fayetteville because they'll be 6-0. A&M will be, and I just don't think that I don't think they're that good of a team. They're a good team, but I think they're going to come back down to earth. They'll lose at Arkansas and then at LSU in back-to-back weeks. Get a much-needed bye week after those 2 losses. They'll beat Missouri on the road, and they'll get South Carolina and Sanford at home, win both of those games, but then lose on the road at Texas to end the year 9-3 and 5-3. Now, won't be in Atlanta with 3 conference losses. The playoff resume for A&M, Notre Dame is a very good win, but you're kind of looking at their SEC slate, hoping that they'd have a better win. Now, look, if Auburn and Florida both pan out the way that I think they will, which are 2 9-3 teams, then you have that's 2 ranked SEC wins. They're both at home, but those are still very good wins, and South Carolina. So they have the potential to have some very good conference wins. But there's also the chance that I'm wrong about those teams, and they'll be 7-5, and all of a sudden that resume is way worse. So I think A&M's playoff chances, let's just assume that my record prediction for them is correct, their playoff chances really depend on how good Auburn, Florida, and Carolina actually are. Because you need those 3 top 25 wins potentially to really drive this resume over the edge, along with Notre Dame, because you kind of missed your opportunity to beat an LSU or a Texas, which would definitely push you over. Speaking of Texas, they're next up on the list. Excuse me again, my goodness. Obviously, Arch Manning, not sure if you guys have heard of him. He's this guy, a quarterback for them. It really is weird to me how little we got to see him last year, especially with how Ewers was literally playing through an injury. I mean, like, I'm not putting all the stock into that, saying he's clearly not that good, he's worse than an injured 7th-round pick, because I don't necessarily think that's true. But I'm definitely... The one thing I will say is that it probably just speaks to how his preparedness to be a starter, which obviously can change a lot from last December to this August. But we'll have to see how that really does play out. At running back, I'm very excited for the running backs. They have Quintravion Wisner coming back as a junior, who played in 15 games for him last year, was 3rd-team All-SEC, had 226 carries, over 1,000 yards, and 5 scores. And also C.J. Baxter. So C.J. Baxter for Texas and Ruben Owens for A&M really had the exact same thing happen to them, where there was all this buzz about them in August, and then they just missed the whole year after fall camp. But in 2023, he was honorable mention All Big 12 as a freshman. Not All Big 12 freshman, All Big 12 as a freshman. He ran for almost 700 yards and 5 scores that year. He's an incredible player. At receiver, you've got Ryan Wingo, who is a sophomore. He played in every game last year as a freshman. Had 472 yards and 2 touchdowns. You also have 2 incoming 5-star receivers. One of them is Khalil Lockett, who was number 21 overall, and the other is Jamie French, who was also just a very highly rated player. Those guys are very exciting to watch, and we'll see how much playing time they really do get early, but those guys can be dynamic playmakers really for anybody. Looking at their O-line, they have a redshirt sophomore in Trevor Gooseby and a true sophomore in Brandon Baker projected as their starting tackles right now. That's not awesome, but their interior OL is pretty experienced. You have a redshirt junior at left guard in Nito Umeozulu. You have a senior center in Cole Huston and a senior right guard in DJ Campbell. And I wouldn't be worried about the skill level of those guys at tackle for Texas, because obviously Texas is going to have good guys in the trenches. You just wonder about how quickly they can get adjusted to SEC life, really, week in, week out. Defensively, Colin Simmons, the sophomore, guy was a freshman All-American last year coming off the edge, played in all 16 games, 48 tackles, 14 TFLs, and 9 sacks as a true freshman is just absurd. You have Cole Brevard coming in at D-tackle from Purdue as a redshirt senior. He was honorable mention All Big Ten last year, had 19 tackles and a sack and a half. He'll be interesting to see how he kind of comes in and if he's able to produce early on. At linebacker, I absolutely love Anthony Hill Jr. He started all 16 games last year, had 113 tackles, 16 TFLs, 8 sacks, a pick, 2 pass breakups, and 4 forced fumbles. And then you look at their secondary, you have Kobe Black, who is a true sophomore. That would scare you if he didn't play in all 16 as a freshman and make 13 tackles for him. So he wasn't necessarily a giant numbers producer, but the guy has played a ton of football already at the college level. You also have Malik Muhammad at junior, who is a corner, started all 16 games last year, 36 tackles, 8 pass breakups. You have Michael Taffy at free safety, who is a redshirt senior, started all 16, was an AP All-America second team last year, tallied 78 tackles, 5.5 TFLs, 2 sacks, 2 picks, 12 pass breakups. He's kind of filled up the box score. So obviously this is Texas. Believe it or not, they do have a lot of talent. But the question really is, do they have a true receiver one with all the youth in there? There's tons of talent. I'm not worried about their receivers, but will they have somebody step up and kind of be the alpha dog in that room for them? Looking at their schedule, I have Texas starting off the year 3-3. I think they lose that game to Ohio State to open. They beat their cupcakes at home for the next 3. They have their bye week, and then I have them losing in Gainesville to Florida, and I have them losing to Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl. But then I had them winning the rest of their games. I had them going to beat Kentucky and Mississippi State on the road. I had them beating Vanderbilt at home. They have their second bye week. I had them winning on the road at Georgia, and then beating Arkansas and A&M at home. Part of the 3-3 start is just because of all the youth I talked about. You have Arch making his first real starts as a starting quarterback. You have so much youth at receiver. You have 2 sophomores at offensive tackle. I just think it's going to take a little bit for this team to get comfortable, but they don't really have that much time. So starting off 3-3 is going to raise a lot of questions, but I had them finishing 9-3 with a win over Georgia, a win over A&M, but you kind of lost your other 3 resume-building games. I think they'll be a fringe playoff team, which is weird to say, but I think that's how this year turns out for Texas. And then finally, if you're still listening to me talk, I can't believe you're doing that. But now we're here at Vanderbilt. I'll be starting off with Diego Pavia, who is the graduate quarterback for him. Team captain, all SEC second team last year. Threw for over 2,000 yards, had 20 touchdowns, ran for 801 and 8 more. And he'll be complemented by Cedric Alexander, who is a junior running back who ran for 586 yards last year and 6 touchdowns. So Vandy should have a very good running attack. But passing-wise, obviously Pavia is so reliable enough throwing the ball. And his best pass catcher, I think, is going to be Eli Stowers, who is the graduate at tight end. He was all SEC first team last year, played in all 13 games, had 638 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. At receiver, you've got Junior Sherrill, who was a junior, caught 29 for 3 touchdowns last year and 411 yards. Trent Hudson, who is a redshirt senior coming in from Mississippi State. He had 35 catches last year for 551 yards and 10 scores. And then looking at their offensive line, all these guys should probably have mortgages at this point. Isaiah Glass at left tackle, who is a graduate transfer from Oklahoma State. Sterling Porcher, who is a redshirt senior at left guard, transferring in from Texas Tech. Jordan White, who is a grad transfer at center from Liberty. Chase Mitchell, who is a graduate at right guard. And Bryce Henderson, who is a graduate South Dakota transfer. This offensive line has 4 graduates on it and then a redshirt senior. Like that, I'm not sure you can get a more experienced offensive line if Porcher was a grad, but having that sort of experience and that many reps is unbelievable for a team to have. It's rare and it's incredibly helpful. Looking at their defense, Miles Capers coming off the edge. He's also a graduate. This team is incredibly old. Not in like a bad, but like in a good way. But Miles Capers started all 12 games last year, had 46 tackles, 8 TFLs, 3 sacks, and a pick last year. At linebacker, you have Langston Patterson, who was the senior captain this year. Started 11 games for him last year, had 78 tackles, 5 TFLs, a fumble recovery, and 2 pass breakups. And then at corner, Martell Height is a junior. He was all SEC second team last year as a returner. The guy's a great athlete. But then defensively, he also had 33 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 2 picks, so he's a great player. Jordan Matthews is coming in from Tennessee. He is a redshirt sophomore at corner. Only played in 2 games last year. We'll see how he turns out. And then CJ Hurd, a sophomore at strong safety, is coming in from FAU. He was third team All-American Conference last year, not All-American. He had 82 tackles, half a tackle for loss, 2 forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries last year. So, you look at this Vandy roster, there really are things you can like at every position group. But going through their schedule, there's a lot that I don't like. I think they'll start off 2-0. They'll beat Charleston Southern, and they'll win that game at Virginia Tech. But I have them losing their first SEC game to South Carolina, then beating Georgia State and Utah State, and then rattling off 5 straight losses at Alabama, their bye week. Then they host LSU and Missouri, at Texas, and they host Auburn. I think they lose all those games. They'll get a much-needed bye week after 4 straight weeks of getting beat up on. Then they'll beat Kentucky at home, but then lose to Tennessee in Neyland to end the year at 5-7 and 1-7. It'll be a little disappointing for Vandy to miss a bowl game this year, especially after last year, and you kind of figured to have positive momentum. But it's really hard to find wins on this schedule. Like, Carolina is going to be good. They're not going to be the Carolina of the past 5 years. LSU is good. Auburn is going to be good. Like, your home conference games, they could get the Missouri game at home. That's probably the one that, if I had to switch a game, I would say they'd beat Missouri at home. But all their home conference games are against teams that are going to be improved versions of themselves this year. And the road games in the SEC are road games in the SEC. Also, it's not like they're easy road games. It's Bama, Texas, and Tennessee. So it's a very hard schedule for Vanderbilt. They could easily win that Missouri game and get bowl eligible, but we'll see how that turns out. So that wraps it up for this full SEC roster and schedule preview. I can't imagine anybody still here, so I'm just talking to myself right now. But for anybody who was here at any point, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Check me out at Tailgate Talk SEC and W Thomas Sports on Twitter, and I'll see you guys next time.